But if he ends his career on a second Daniel Dubois defeat, his boxing record and his career will look a lot weaker than it did. AJ's career hangs in the balance now.
The winner by knockout victory, and still IBF heavyweight champion of the world.
72 hours, barely that, after Anthony Joshua was violently knocked out by Daniel Dubois in only 5 rounds. And he's in London and he's meeting with Saudi's boxing supremo Turki Al Sheikh to plan his next move. He could have vanished off on holiday to Dubai. He could have spent some time with little son JJ. He could have licked his wounds away from the media. That's not the AJ that won Olympic gold for this country. That's not the AJ who has carried this sport for us for over a decade. He's told us he's a warrior. He's told us the ride isn't done. He's told us he wants to go again. Contrary to what Eddie Hearn will say about there being an immediate rematch clause with Daniel Dubois, that isn't the case. AJ has 1 fight left on his Riyadh season deal. That could well be Daniel Dubois. If Turki Al Sheikh says, I want that rematch, I want to see it again, I want to reward AJ for having so many fights in Saudi Arabia, for first bringing Saudi Arabia boxing, big time boxing with Andy Ruiz's rematch, then they'll stand by him and they'll give it to him. Daniel Dubois has no reason not to accept it, that's for sure. However, until the chairman of the GEA over there can get his boxing league up and running, he does seem to be operating a winner stays on system, and this is incredibly exciting, but it's also very ruthless. Look at Deontay Wilder. Was a big favourite over there, kept turning up to the shows, everyone was excited. Then he put on 2 stinking performances, and I'd be amazed if we ever see him again. If we're thinking about guys who have seriously impressed the heavyweight scene in Saudi, or certainly on the Saudi shows, you must look at Joseph Parker, who already lost to AJ once. That's a potential rematch. You've got to look at Martin Bakole. There's an excellent story of them being old sparring partners. You'd even throw in a name like Ajit Kabayel. You throw in 19-year-old superstar Moses Atalma. The least likely, but when Saudi Arabia are making fights, nothing's ruled out. My point is that they might have looked at that and thought, we want Daniel Dubois to do something different. Should he take the rematch if Turki Al Sheikh calls it on? He hasn't got a choice, essentially, unless he wants to buy himself out of his contract, and I'm sure that would be very expensive. But just from a totally sporting perspective, in the heavyweight division, historically, the better boxer usually wins the rematch. Whether you want to go back to Floyd Patterson, Joe Louis, Muhammad Ali, Vladimir Klitschko, Lennox Lewis, even on to AJ, and then Usyk. If the Dubois performance was an anomaly, if that first big blow Dubois caught him with when AJ dropped his hands and thought the bell was going and thought he was out of range, then he should come back and win this. With all that he has experienced physically and emotionally. Daniel Dubois has had 2 defeats. He hasn't rematched and got rematch revenge yet. I'm sure he wants to. But AJ has. I know the Ruiz one isn't the coolest of victories. He turned up 5'6" and 25 stone, and AJ danced around. But he knows what it means. He knows how it's done. If he truly believes, and his team truly believe, that they made mistakes that were glaringly obvious, if they believe that Dubois did nothing to surprise them and can't do anything to surprise them in a rematch, should be even easier, then they'll grab the rematch and be confident. But then AJ's also got to fear that a second defeat to a Daniel Dubois, who's almost 10 years his junior, who was, little more than a sparring partner, a cannon fodder when they did rounds at Team GB, nearly 10 years ago. That's devastating for his career. His legacy is intact. His legacy is not going to be questioned for what he's done for British boxing, for what he's done for British gyms, for what he's done for all the young kids that are boxing now, winning world titles now, going to Olympics because of him. That is secured. But if he ends his career on a second Daniel Dubois defeat, having never fought a prime Wilder, having never fought a prime Fury, having twice missed out on undisputed fights with those guys, his boxing record and his career will look a lot weaker than it did before 1 Dubois defeat, let alone 2. Anthony Joshua, the fighter, I think he would have fought Wilder anytime. He would have fought Fury anytime. And I think he will chomp at the bit for the Dubois rematch. The difference now is that the money men around him talked him out of the Fury and the Fury and the Wilder deals because they wanted too much money, or it had to be on a certain TV channel. Well, now looking back, those are disastrous mistakes that they've made. They cannot afford another one. AJ's career hangs in the balance now. And I think now is the time he could do with a mentor more than any other. He had Rob McCracken for best part of a decade. Sean Murphy at the brilliant Finchley ABC before that. I don't know who is around AJ now that he will listen to for good, excellent boxing advice. He doesn't need business advice. He doesn't need commercial advice. He's got a great team around him that can make him money, generate him money, make him a superstar, help his property portfolio. But right now, I hope he has someone that he can go to who's experienced boxing at the highest level, experienced defeats. I know he has a good relationship with Vladimir Klitschko. Maybe that would be a great guy. Klitschko could be a massive man to lean on. Derek Chisora will be a massive man to lean on. Those guys, I hope he goes to and speaks to. Should he take the Daniel Dubois rematch straight away without rebuilding his confidence against a good opponent who will test him? Because Franklin, Helenius, Wallin and Ngannou didn't do much. I thought Wallin would. I knew Ngannou and the other 2 guys wouldn't. So were those 4 wins, 2 under Ben Davison, were they false dawns? Or were they the correct building blocks and the Dubois was a freak accident? If I'm Anthony Joshua and his team, I prefer to fight a Joe Parker, a dangerous, tough man, or a Martin Bakole, rebuild, reinstall confidence among the fans, make the fight handsome again. Let Dubois go and, grow his brand and grow his marketability even more. Then we go again. Sadly, if Turki Al-Sheikh says, you're fighting Daniel Dubois on March 1st because our Jeddah season opens or the old Riyadh season ends, then he will have to do it. And he will have to exercise demons darker than he's ever gone through before. And he'll have to face annoying, pesky reporters like me who will ask him about being gun shy, about not having the desire, about not having the grit, about being too rich. What are you doing it for? And he doesn't really deserve that. He doesn't need that. He's done enough for all of us. So it's a massive decision now. Sadly, it's not even in his hands. He'll be told Dubois rematch, or Martin Bakole, or Joe Parker, or Ajit Kabayel. And he either takes the fight, or he has to rip up his contract and walk away. I can't see him doing that.